work session for February 7th, 2023. First on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance by Ms. Frances Rosales.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a moment of silence, please. Any questions? Any questions on the consent agenda?
A couple of things on the consent agenda I'd like to point out. So if you look under C, routine bids, there's two of those I want to call to your attention just because they're topics of conversation. The second one, RFP number 23-02, custodial services. So we sent that out for bid. We had more bids than I think we anticipated. However, they came in much higher than we anticipated. I think the lowest, Mr. Lee's at $1.2 million for the lowest bid, and this was just to be able to serve our schools that requested it. That is probably something we could, so we were going ahead and asking to accept the bids, but we aren't asking to go ahead and do anything with those bids yet. I'm not sure that fiscally that is even reasonable for us to look at. That is almost 10% of our entire budget for custodial services just to serve a couple schools. However, you guys also know we've been 50 to 60 custodians short, so we wanted to see what did it look like. Trey, anything you want to add to that?
Not at this time unless there's a question.
And that was just a supplement.
Just as a supplement, not to replace, but we have several schools that we've talked about that have really had a hard time staffing, and they kind of were across the gamut of what we can look at.
How many schools was it?
Remember how many we bid out?
5 or 6.
Mike Ford, you mind coming up, Mike, and talking about it if you remember it all? I know you know. I know Mike is kind of an unsung hero. Mike Walls is our director of maintenance, and so he makes sure everything. And when your director of maintenance is behind the scenes, and a lot of things happen on a daily basis. Like yesterday, we had a sprinkler issue that he got taken care of within an hour, and so I appreciate all that you do, because when your director of maintenance is not at the forefront, that means you're probably doing things well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, it was 4 schools that we looked at. So, yeah, we had several people bid on it. So,
Do you remember what schools? Riverdale?
it was Riverdale, Siegel High, David Urey, and Laverne High. So those are the most where they're down. So, and those are big schools.
They are.
Or 3 high schools and elementary. So.
This Riverdale, Siegel, David Urey, and what was the other one?
It was Laverne High.
Laverne High.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what are we going to do for these schools? Because I've had some phone calls. We got to do something. I don't know what we're going to do. I know what we're going to do next year. I think, we've talked about this. But to finish out this year, I know there are some really needy schools that do not have 2 or 3 custodians for an entire high school, and they can't function like that.
Yeah, they're struggling. They are. David Urey went for almost a month, 3 weeks to a month with no custodians. So your teachers and principals and other staff was taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing we did, another thing that we did to help these schools out for a long time, we sent maintenance staff down there. The problem with that is they get paid their wage and the custodians are budgeted their wage, so it doesn't take long to eat through the money that's allocated for those schools. So it's not, unfortunately, it's financially not stable. We have been approving any classified staff member across the board, not just at these 4 schools, but at any school. The principals have been emailing Mike and myself We look at the numbers. If they're an EA that wants to work 3 hours, if their custodians want to work overtime, we have authorized, typically they would get comp time. Comp time does not solve the problem because what happens, they build up a lot of comp time that they have to use and then they're gone and there's nobody. So we have changed that ruling. We're paying overtime. So any classified staff member that wants to work can stay and work, and all the principal has to do is reach out to me and Mike. They send us the name of the person. I get with Bonnie in payroll, and we get those people signed up, and she adds them to the time clock at those schools, and they clock in and clock out. Our custodians that take care of central office are actually working at Riverdale for 3 or 4 hours before they come here every afternoon. So we do have custodians at other schools that have requested to come work at other schools for overtime. Anybody that asks, we've authorized to do so.
Well, that's
So,
good to know.
so to answer your question, how do we get to the end of the year? The more fiscally responsible way is to do what we're doing. And
Are we having to shuffle money around to
Not
pay
with
for
this.
this
No,
custodial services contract?
no, ma'am. That's what we have made a point, that we're watching the hours and that no school runs over their budget.
So with that being said, with overtime, do you think there's a likelihood that these contracts will also go in overtime?
You talking about the contract that we're at? We're not requesting to do that at this time.
Okay.
With that money, it would be over budget.
Okay.
We
With
can't
this-
afford that.
this is just accepting the bid. If we were to actually go with them, then we would come back before the board.
And it's an agreed upon set hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that would have to go through all the budget amendment process, moving into other contracted services, all kinds of different lines.
Okay. Well, can we see preview to the contract?
Yeah. I think they should be in the tab. under
It'd be in the tab.
The tab? Okay.
Is this part-time positions or full-time positions or both, or?
A little of both. For what we're lacking on right now, yeah, it's full and part-time.
We have our salary study coming back when?
They are here, probably still in the conference room right now. So they are meeting with district staff this week, and then they will be compiling all of our information over the next 2 weeks.
And they were going to be presenting by March?
Yes, should be.
Okay.
The other one I would call out is bid 3649, HVAC renovation, so John Coleman Annex. So this is just something to bring to discussion, and I hate to talk about this, but it's the reality of where we are. John Coleman's Annex, when we built the John Coleman new building to replace the John Coleman Annex, the plan was to, at that time, demolish the John Coleman Annex. Because we grew so quick, we have used the John Coleman Annex for just about a little bit of everything, from voluntary pre-K to the virtual school to adult ed. It's been a little bit of everything the last 4 years. We are to the point now where we need to decide as a board, is that something we want to continue to invest a fortune into, or do we want to go with the original plan to demolish that building and look to put those places elsewhere? As a staff, we've put a couple things in place, so we have emailed all elementary principals to see if they had room for voluntary pre-K at their buildings. And then we have also talked to the virtual school, and Dr. Subicon is aware, and so is Ms. Drayton from Holloway, that Holloway would be a potential in their annex building for the virtual school. So we have options, but I know this is HVAC. What did this HVAC bid come in at?
Sir?
What did this bid come in for the HVAC renovation?
Right now, we have $750,000 allocated for this year, so we broke the project down into phases. Total is close to $3 million.
So again, this would be accepting the bid, but as a board, as part of our, not only our 5-year plan, but looking at our overall buildings, we need to decide, is this a building we want to try to maintain, or is this a building that we just need to go with the original plan for?
So based upon what you said about the moving the areas that are currently in that building, when could the pre-K start? If we were to move it, and what was the other that meets in there?
Virtual school,
A virtual school, when will those two
we can move them for next
areas
school year.
depart? By next
We can
school
move
year?
them for next school year. This is just,
Okay.
Troy, how much have we put into? I know we've replaced cafeteria, floor.
We spent about $150,000 on the floor, and we just completed last year the completion of the new roof. So it has a new roof and it has a new cafeteria floor.
So if we move the virtual school and the pre-K out of the annex from the Joan Coleman building, then we don't want to need to replace the HVAC then, right? Because they're not going to be using for that purpose.
It's a money pit, and that's where we decide, do we want to try to revitalize it, or do we want to just let it go? It is, for what we would have paid for renting another facility for VPK and the virtual school to be in, it is probably meant, I mean, you don't ever want to look at that, but we put a new roof on that building for what it would cost us to rent and lease during COVID and everything else going on, and it served
Yeah.
its purpose.
And then some people said they were going to use that as a storage area. Do we still need space for
It
storage?
needs space for storage everywhere.
It depends on the type of, we do need storage everywhere. We have a big need here for storage that is conditioned space because of the documents that our general counsel down there and some others have to keep for a period of time. We don't have, we've been utilizing, like the schools, we've been using the space that we're in, but since we've grown, we have people in closets, and we no longer have those space, and we're renting space to keep documents in.
So nothing for decision tonight, but within the next couple of weeks or month, just for us to know, as part of our 177, do we want to go ahead and put this HVAC in, or do we want to just let it go?
Yeah, we
yeah.
visited Holloway and we saw their space that is quite spacious, but not yet up to par for a virtual school, but it is spacious.
Trey, how much would it cost for us to demolish that building? I mean, I know it's not free, so.
I would say probably 250 to $500,000. It does have asbestos in it. So we'll have to deal with that. That increases the cost somewhat. Now, there's not as much asbestos in it as there was before because we've removed all the floors. The year before we did the new John Coleman, because we redid the floors and redid the classrooms. So a lot of it is gone, but there is still piping insulation that's up underneath the basement crawl space that has, and we would have to address it. So that increases our cost somewhat, but not to make it unfeasible.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. If this money, if we were to go with the original plan, could this money be allocated to another school to fix the HVAC?
That's,
Will that bump it up? Will it bump up another school?
I have projects now that have come in over budget, so we would move this money to those projects to allow those projects to get started and completed under this budget process. So the money would still be utilized this year, but probably not for another HVAC project. It would be something else that came in over budget because there's not other HVAC projects that are in that price range. They're all above it.
Okay.
Mr. Lee, could we use it for just storage and not have to redo the HVAC?
There are certain types of things that we could store there. A lot of the things that we're looking for storage for, though, need conditioned space.
And we will have to clean out the asbestos, right, for it to be used?
We could continue to utilize it without eliminating the asbestos.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions on the consent agenda?
All right, number 7 is the 23-24 signing bonus incentive for hardest staff subject areas, so tab 2. This is pretty much our preliminary request. We have our job fair this Saturday from 11 to 1 at Stewart's Creek High School, and so this is just so that we can try to get ahead of where we normally are. We are requesting pretty much the exact same things we have done in the past. Your hardest staff areas: English as a second language, math, science, history, Englishes, ESL, and Dr. Anthony, what am I missing?
BCBA?
Yes, so our our certified behavior analyst, that area as well. Right now, we are in the middle of having budget discussions with our principals to talk about that hard-to-staff school portion. Overall, I think some schools are going to request to continue. Some schools we need to remove just because it's a different issue. And then some schools are going to request probably to continue that. But that is a further conversation that's going to connect with our salary study information as well.
Since we're on, excuse me, English second language, have we filled any of those positions that we were looking to fill?
We have filled some, we constantly still fill some, but we are probably, I can get numbers by Thursday, we're easily 5, 6, 7 positions down at all times for English as a second language.
But my understanding, the hard-to-fill positions is just a specialized language, like teaching Spanish, not necessarily the ESL, because I was discussing that with one of our, I believe it was one of our principals. Is that the case?
It depends on your school.
It depends on the school.
And so where we get the biggest and where we used to get the largest number of our English as a second language teachers, it is a specialized degree. So they have a teaching degree and it's an extra endorsement. It's 4 extra classes on top of a certification that they already have. And then to do that, we used to get a lot of teachers from Metro Nashville because they require all of their teachers to be dual certified and we do not. With the pay increase they did recently, that hasn't been a recruiting tool for us as much. The other portion of it that we had with our Grow Your Own partnership with Lipscomb, we weren't able to fulfill a full cohort like we would like. So there just wasn't that interest from our staff members of English as a second language. So we're hoping that'll be a push for a second group that we have.
Okay.
We are over 10%. We got our TISA verification information. I'll talk about that during finances. That we're over 10% of a district now with direct serve of students of the English as a second language on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you.
Number 8.
All right, number 8, so this is a yearly requirement from Tennessee State Board of Education. The instruction department is requesting permission to make an application to offer credit for special courses under the following guidelines. Rule 05201-3-5-2A. Local school systems may offer special courses not listed in 0520-1-3-06 on an experimental basis. Again, this is State Board of Education rules. The Commissioner of Education must approve each course in advance each year. Rutherford County High Schools are requesting approval for the following special course request: Sports Psychology, Introduction to Logic. I'd love to see that one. Honors Mythology 2, Positive Psychology, Neuroscience and Society, Film and Literature, Music Industry Survey, CTE. Specific for one school. I believe every one of these is individual, isn't that? Sometimes we get them from multiple schools. I think this one's individual. Okay. Is that correct, Dr. Chastain?
It is, but we can provide the list for who is put in the request. Normally, we write it so that other schools can offer it if it's something that they would like to offer, so we just kind of leave it open, but most of these are requests by specific schools.
Number 9.
All right, number 9, Special Education, Tab 4, so Physical Therapist Assistant, under the direction of the Coordinator of Special Education and the general supervision of a registered physical therapist. This position is to provide physical therapy services which will enable eligible students with disabilities to benefit from their special education program. Essential job duties and qualifications are listed in the job description attached. This job description will give us the final position and the ability to move from a private contractor to a Rutherford County Schools employee. Funding will be paid through IDEA Part B funds. So we had for our physical therapist, these are the assistants that would, or the assistant that would serve underneath them. Dr. Ralston, anything you want to add?
Number 10.
All right, number 10, ESL Department, Tab 5. So the ESL Department will continue writing curriculum units for grades K-12 from February through July 2023. 22 teachers will be offered contracts for their work on these projects. The contracts will be funded through Title III funds. The approximate cost of the curriculum writing initiative will be $17,600. So this will be our 3rd year of doing that, so that our ESL teachers also have a curriculum to follow instead of just looking wherever they needed to find resources.
Any questions? Number 11.
All right, number 11, Legal, Tab 6. The board's been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system under discipline. The student was remanded to alternative school for possession of marijuana engaging in public lewdness. According to policy 6.318, the board may deny admission of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers from another school system while under suspension or expulsion. So Director of Schools recommendations to admit and place into alternative school based on the timeline of everything falling out and when the student would be eligible for admission. And I believe you have, yeah, that's, your manila folder as well.
We have our folder. And Ms. Ridley will take calls if you have any questions. Okay, we're moving on to number 2.
Yes.
Number 11.
And then number 2, the paralegal position. So the legal department's requesting an updated job description for the paralegal position to include revised qualifications to make the position more competitive. We recently had our former paralegal leave us on January 31st, Kelsey Bickford, so she is no longer with us. So we have posted that position, didn't necessarily get the quality of candidates that we would look for, so we're looking to make that position a little bit more attractive. Ms. Ridley?
Yes, we posted the position, and we only had 3 applicants apply. None of them had the qualifications that we previously had for this job position. When we posted the paralegal position over the summer, before Ms. Bickford joined us, we also had a very small amount of candidates apply. So we are asking to change only the qualifications of the education level. I know a lot of paralegals may have not gotten a traditional bachelor's degree, but may have school law experience or legal experience or even school experience. So we're asking just to kind of broaden that a little bit so that we can get hopefully more applicants that would be, competitive.
And that job is posted on our website?
Yes, ma'am.
For those listening, thank you.
Yep, and that is something, so our legal department is down someone, so we have 2 instead of 3. And so we are a big district to even have 2. So we're moving as quickly as possible if there's some things we need.
I believe so.
Yes. Yep.
I believe
We looked
so.
at a market study for setting it last year.
Okay, number 12.
So Financial Matters, Tab 7, Board Recognition of the Rockville Band Booster at Rockville High School as an RCS School Support Organization, or SSO. Per RCS Board Policy 2.404, only a group or organization that has entered into a written cooperative agreement with the board may use the name, mascot, or logo of a school or the school district to solicit or raise money, materials, property, security, services, or other things of value. The Rockville Band Boosters has provided all information requested from the board, recently updated written cooperative agreement, and can be recognized now as an RCS SSO.
So this answers the question, can we have boosters? Yes, we can have boosters.
Yes, we can.
Any questions? Number 2.
All right, number 2 is a centralized cafeteria fund budget amendment, Fund 143. So this fiscal year 22-23 centralized cafeteria Fund 143 amendment is to increase revenue and expenditures to recognize the awarded National School Lunch Program, so that's what NSLP stands for, Supply Chain Assistant Grant Rounds 2 and 3 from the United States Department of Agriculture. This grant funding is in response to the unprecedented challenges in purchasing and receiving food that operators of the National School Lunch Program and School Breakfast Program are experiencing in school year 22-23. This amendment reflects the grant award that was approved by Tennessee Department of Education. This year's grant award is $1,430,251. And so to hit on that, so in looking at that fund, we're going to talk about our overall funds in just a minute. Fund 143 is our centralized cafeteria. So this increased fund was pretty much just awarded to us. Something that happened pre-COVID, or right at COVID, was we centralized our cafeteria, and what that did is that cut what we used to call cafeteria monitors from our elementary schools. And so what these funds would allow us to do is to go back and fund cafeteria monitors. They are part-time positions at our elementary schools. They help with supervision, and it is amazing if you've ever been in an elementary cafeteria at truly how much support elementary school-aged children need, whether it's throwing things away, opening milks, that different type of thing. This allows us to bring those positions back for elementary schools. So if the board approves this, at the next board meeting, I'll be requesting to add 2 of those at all of our elementary schools and possibly middle schools, that this would cover that grant.
Question, well, because I know a lot of our teachers work during lunch and help. Is this a supplement to our teachers, or is this just going to be strictly?
Strictly school nutrition monitors, because we technically are supposed to, per their contract, give them duty-free lunch. So hopefully this allows us to give them duty-free lunch by having additional people. We talked to elementary principals today. The biggest stipulation is that right now they're having to use educational assistants and teachers to monitor the cafeteria. And so this would allow us to actually put cafeteria monitors back the way it was before COVID.
Allow our teachers have some planning.
And ours.
Or lunch, an actual lunch.
And our EAs to actually work with students in instruction and on open milks. Yes.
Any questions? Okay, going to number 13.
All right, number 13, Facilities and Construction, tab 8. So Oakland Middle School storage building request. Principal Brad Deckers requested to partner with Oakland High Trades to build a 15 by 30 by 9 storage building to house the archery team equipment. OMS will contract with a moving company to relocate the building to the rear of the building outside the 900 hallway. All materials and relocation costs will be at no cost to the school board. Engineering and Construction has reviewed the request and supports approval.
Any questions? If y'all have not been to an archery tournament, you need to go. I spent last weekend at Stewart's Creek, Friday night and Saturday, and it was all levels. And y'all, we have some very talented, what do you call them, archers? Okay. As a matter of fact, I believe Blackman may have probably a state championship at the high school level. But you will be shocked how well these archers are. And it's worth going out and watching them, I promise you. And the flights are very short, so you could go in the morning and see, you could just stay an hour and see a couple of flights, and you're going to be impressed. I don't know how they stand so close together and still, yeah, it terrifies me. But anyway, any other questions? Number 2.
All right, so number 2, the 5-year building program discussion and direction. At the last board meeting, Dr. Sullivan presented the board with 2 options for discussion and consideration. Health and Education has requested submission of an updated 5-year plan to move forward with funding. Option 1 being what was agreed upon last year with an addition of a new elementary school on the west side. Option 2 includes removing the elementary school addition. It was requested the board look over the options presented and be prepared to vote on this item. And of course, the board can take any option they want to in adopting a 5-year plan. Just for going to the bond market, we need to be able to give health and ed, budget and finance, and then the county commission direction.
Dr. Sullivan, when we vote on this and we submit it, can they bounce it back to us if they don't like it, or is it kind of an approve or deny situation?
They can do anything as they wish. They are a funding body.
Okay.
They can fund an amount and tell us how that amount goes to. You get into the overall budget process to where the county commission doesn't have line-by-line veto authority. This is different because this is a true looking at funding for our additions. So they can say that bids came in for this much and we're giving you this much for just these projects, or a mixture of things.
All of Riverdale and Smyrna, are they both at or over capacity?
Yes, they absolutely are.
Okay. Oakland is not?
Correct, it is not.
Currently, but if we rezone, it could be.
On the elementary additions, the second proposal, could you speak a little bit to the facilities?
Yeah.
How that would be different than...
Option 2 involves pretty much the same thing as option 1. Just instead of adding a new elementary school, it adds an addition to Blackman Elementary and Stewart's Creek Elementary. We've had a lot of discussion around that. I don't think that's what anybody necessarily loves or wants to do. The only thing that I would add is that we get in the conversation of we don't want our elementary schools to be that big, but I just remind you they're already that big. We're just trying to take care of the students there. My biggest concern with the additions is having elementary schools that are that big, and then also, like we just opened Rockville Middle School, we lose the ability to add space that we need, such as bathrooms, gym, like Rock Springs Elementary School, we added an addition there, and so you have 1,300 kids using one gymnasium, so I can give them all the gym teachers that we could hire, but they still only have one gym. And so as we get bigger, those are some of our logistical issues.
Also, like the bathrooms, correct me if I'm wrong, Trade, but you couldn't add any new bathrooms even though you're adding more students at Stewart's Creek, is that correct?
That is correct. It's no different than Rockville Middle. Those buildings were not anticipated to expand. Therefore, the piping and the services was not prepared for that. We have taking care of that in future designs. We are making that accommodation so that if this was to come up in the future, that we could in future programs, but past projects, they cannot.
But we've talked about these additions versus the building a new school. And one thing that Trey has mentioned is that the additions is only a temporary fix because it's only going to hold us up in that area, particularly for a few years, and we still need to look into building a school. And the timing to build an addition versus a new school is going to be the same. It's the same time. So whether we build at an addition right now, it sounds like from what he said a few meetings ago that we still have to look to building a school. So, because it's only a temporary fix. And both of his schools are already growing, they're already way over capacity. They're over 114%. So the rates, the alleviation of an addition is only going to be a Band-Aid solution.
We need a new elementary.
We need a new elementary school in that area. And plus, that area, there's potential that the site can relieve the school that's overcrowded, and that is Stewart's Creek, Blackman Elementary, and Rockville. So that will take care of that solution in itself. The addition only takes care of the school within that school, but it's only a temporary fix, and that's what was said in the meeting a few months ago when we were talking about this.
To give a little background to our new school board members, the additions came at the request of our county commissioners. Our county commissioners asked at least 2 years ago for us to look at property to make additions so that property that we already had in existence, so we did not have to incur the expense of additional property. So that's why the additions are on there.
But that was for the high school. So there was a vote for the high schools for additions, but there was no mention for the elementary school at the time. And so what went before the county commissioners was to prioritize the additions, but there was no priority given to the elementary school last year, because that was at the meetings when they were talking about.
I think if I can just real quick, what Ms. Sharp was talking about, because I opened Rocky Fork Middle, so the reason we didn't open like a new middle school, Rockville Middle School, and we added on there, and to Rockville Elementary and Rock Springs Elementary and Laverne Middle, is that they asked us to go back and add on to our schools instead. Of course, that was a different commission, but they did ask us to add on at that point instead.
In the meantime, it's just getting worse.
You're exactly
It's just
right.
getting
We've
worse.
had-
Not
we've had-
getting any
We've
better.
had COVID.
Is there a rezoning scheduled for Oakland?
All of them,
All of
everybody's.
it is
Well,
being rezoned.
no, I understand that once we get our study back and all of that, but there's currently nothing, but I'm having a hard time understanding why Oakland is on here in the space that it is when we have schools that are at or over capacity and it isn't. When we don't know what that study is going to say and where that study is going to ultimately bring us just yet. So I don't know, and I'm just throwing out ideas, I don't know if it would be better to move it down one more year to not be going to the commission for quite so much money.
So I requested all of us, and you guys shall get the spreadsheet of all the information, all of the schools that have been built, added on to and annexes for the last 20 years. And if you look at all that, 48.6 of it there was 35 schools in total. And out of that, 48.6 was done for Laverne and Smyrna. And only 28.6 was done in Murfreesboro. So there's been a lot of tension that's been happening up in the north end side of things. You got 8.6% that was done in Rockville, 8.6% that was in Christiana, 2.9% that was in Eagleville, and 2.9% in Walter Hill and Smyrna. And Murfreesboro hasn't had that much attention, and the reason why Oakland was in there is because if you visit the schools are not connected. So every single day, those kids are having to go in and out of the buildings because they don't have a way to get there. So if we were to have a Uvadale type of situation, that's a prime location. It can happen there.
because there is no way for them to be safe. So I understand there's capacity there, and there's reasoning that it's going to happen, but if we're looking at the attention that's been done for the past 20 years, there's not been a whole lot of attention that's been happening for Murfreesboro in the last 20 years. And that information every school board member got because I requested it.
It has bothered me since before I got on this board, the situation we have at Riverdale and Oakland. It's not about if, but when. And the situation after that Parkland shooting, I told everybody that would listen to me, we have to fix this. And we've got an opportunity to fix this. And when the zoning comes back in, they're going to have 400 more kids. They're going to be up near capacity. So, but the security issue, if we don't take care of this now, it keeps me up at night that something's going to happen.
And the addition that was added back in 2008 at Oakland, it was just a hallway, like literally it's just a cover to add 4 classrooms, and that was it. That's all that was done. And the same thing with Riverdale.
They did expand
That's all they did.
the cafeteria, and
just
they did
expanded
fix
that.
the offices a little bit, but it did not address the security issue. And there's something that has to be addressed.
And just last week, there were 3 kids that came from Riverdale that went to school. There's no point, okay, I'm going to challenge the point of order. I'm going to challenge the point of
We're
order.
off the topic of the agenda. We need to go to number 3.
This is, I would like to challenge the point of order. Jeffrey, we're having a discussion of the agenda, and this is all included as part of the talking for this 5-year plan versus the option 1 and option 2. And everyone needs to know the information so that we can all come to an informed decision.
If you want, you can make an appeal on the point of order, and the board will have to vote on the appeal to overrule the point of order that's been raised by the chairman. So if you want to overturn the point of order, the board will have to vote no.
Yes, I would like to appeal the point of order raised by the chairwoman because we are in discussions about, for all of us to make informed decisions about whether the 5-year plan of option 1 and option 2. And we've been discussing which of these to vote for, and so we need to know the information and be able to make that informed decision. This is still part of the conversation about the additions that are included on option 1. So that's the motion I make, is to continue the conversation.
I'll second.
Well, this is a work session here.
We don't vote in work sessions.
So, yeah, so don't vote on anything, take any action, but if it's the point of discussion for the work session, board can vote on whether or not to continue to allow the discussion going on with respect to the matters what Ms. Rosales is discussing.
Well, this is a work session. This is what we're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. We're supposed to be discussing it.
We're
supposed to work this out so
Exactly.
it goes smoother on Thursday.
Exactly. That's the whole purpose for us to have this work session, so we can talk about things, so that when we come to vote on Thursday, we can make a vote.
So do we want to allow discussion to continue, or is there consensus to allow discussion to continue, or do we need to take a vote on the point of order?
Take a vote, please.
I haven't.
Okay. All right, the point of order has been raised. There's been an appeal made to the point of order. So we need to call roll to allow, whether or not we allow the discussion to continue or not.
Yes.
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 No.
So discussion will continue.
Thank you.
On that point, on the point of safety, which I think is obviously, it's a good point as well. I'm going back to the greatest need. And when I'm looking at the greatest need, I'm seeing the elementary on the west side. Some of the things that Trey mentioned when we have had these discussions in the past, and I was just kind of reiterating those facts back for people that are maybe tuning in now, are that the facilities, when we build these additions, should we build additions if the proposal to were moved for the elementary school instead of building a new elementary school, it's not an apples to apples type thing, because you don't have the same amount of facilities. You're making schools larger, which we've all agreed is a bad thing. And you're not even getting as many bathrooms as you are adding. So you're not increasing capacity by any stretch. So for me, I think that makes the elementary school a priority. Now, as far as the safety issues, I mean, are the kids that are going to the portables out at these elementary schools, are they not a concern as well? So for me, in a priority point, I would still put the elementary school above Oakland in a priority point. I would back that up by saying that if we are in the middle of a zoning study, so if we are then just going to rezone everybody back over to Oakland, and then you're going to have a new addition at Riverdale and Smyrna, and Oakland doesn't get the addition, but it just got all the extra students, then we just created a brand new problem. So I guess my new question now is, on the zoning study, are they taking any of these additions, potential additions, into effect in the study? And if not, can we get that information? Otherwise, we're just going to be arguing about the same thing in next year.
And we're going to be kicking the can down the road because we're not prioritizing and going forward to say, these are our priority, this is what we need. And that's what happened last time, is that we were asked to put in hierarchy the ones to priority, and then that's how things got moved back. But I will think that as a board, as a will of the board, we will say, these are our priorities, and there is no priority. These are it. These are the priorities.
Well, I do think you have to put them in some kind of a priority, and to me, that does speak to, we do have schools that are currently over capacity. I can appreciate and understand that Oakland may be in that situation if we don't put the addition on, depending on how the zoning goes, but we do have schools that currently, right now, are over capacity. And as far as what side of town got what attention in the past or whatever, I'm not here for just my side of town. Like, I'm here for everybody. The new elementary school is in Murfreesboro, correct? The Beatty property is Murfreesboro?
No, it's in Murfreesboro.
Yeah,
That's what I just said.
yeah.
Oh, I thought you said Murfreesboro.
Currently, it's in the community of Blackman, which is in the county. The city would like to annex it into the city. But it's between Smyrna and Murfreesboro.
Right.
It would alleviate schools
On
that
both
are in
ends.
Smyrna, and it would alleviate schools that are in Murfreesboro. So I would consider it a benefit to both.
And I would have to agree with Caleb that I agree with you in the safety issues. I also agree, we have elementary students walking out to portables. Thurman Francis, the kids walk from the annex to the elementary school. They're not in an enclosed hallway either. So these are not the only schools with those issues either. And we absolutely should be addressing them. My only point was, I believe, Dr. Sullivan, correct me if I'm wrong, when this got brought up at the last meeting, I think you said, I don't see them funding this. I was just trying to maybe let the commissioners know we are serious, we understand the amount of money we're asking for. Maybe it would be better to move something around to show a gesture of good grace. We're trying to work together to make some things happen. That was my only point. I'm not trying to not give Oakland its addition. To me, the schools that are currently at or over capacity and the elementary school, to alleviate some of those situations, would be a priority over that. Just my 2
I didn't get
cents.
to answer the question. The VSP, I think, they are,
Oh, sorry, RSP.
RSP, I'm so sorry. They are aware that we're doing additions.
They are aware of the possibility for additions and the whole 5-year plan in general. So my only, and this is how we are, where we are right now, is the board last year prioritized, and we still don't have anything done.
Well, in regards to the portable situation, the kids coming out, there's a difference. In Oakland, is every kid, every student is going in and out. Every student is going to be going out of the classroom. In the portable situation, with even in Blackman, it's just a small percentage of the schools. We're talking about the whole school population having to go in and outside. And if it's raining and thundering, they have to put the schedule behind. They have to wait a while because they can't go to the other classes. So the advantage of having an addition is that it's going to connect everything, all the school buildings, so that it can be one location, and it's going to minimize the amount of traffic that is going to go in and outside of the school. The portables in the other schools is just a small population, percentage of kids, students are going in and out. We're not talking about the whole student body population, and that's the difference between those two.
So my recommendation, just sitting here hearing the conversation, if those are our needs, I suggest we send those to the Health and Ed and County Commission. We're not our own funding body. Whatever we need, we request. We sent that last year. It got sent back to us. If that's not the will of the county commissioner, Health and Ed, or whichever group, then they can send that back to us just as it did last year. But if it's a need of what we are requesting as a board, and regardless of our nuances of how we feel one year, next year, I think the more support we have to show as a district that this is what we look like from a school board, the better it helps the county commission look at it. Because you could move all of these all over the place and advocate for any one of them.
I think in a good faith, maybe also as well, we could add that we didn't build any new schools last year. And,
Correct.
but we gained how many students?
2,207, the largest growth we've ever had in 1 year.
And so maybe that can show some good faith to the county commission that we are trying to do our due diligence as best as we can, but if we'd have built any one of these or two of these additions last year or something, then we would, this number would be a lot less. So at least there's some consideration there.
The problem is the growth is not paying for itself. We've been saying it for years.
Yep.
We keep bringing people into this county, but yet we don't come up with a funding mechanism that works for the county to build to the growth that we're experiencing. And we haven't built a school in 3 years. We can't go that long, guys, in this county and not build a school with the kind of growth that we're seeing. Even the additions that we're looking at will not keep up with what we're seeing, and what we're experiencing. These additions were put on here because we didn't want to build another high school. We wanted to try to figure out some way that we could add on to our older schools. And to another point that Ms. Darby made, I think at one of our last meetings, we wanted to renovate some of these older buildings. Well, this is a way that we could renovate some of these older buildings, bring them up to par, and make them kind of equal to a Siegel or Blackman or Rockville or Stewart's Creek. There's some inequities there. So here's a way that we can fix some of those problems. Is it the best solution? Probably not, but it is a solution. It's something that we can look at and hopefully agree on and send it to our county commission.
With the 5-year plan, it's always a living document. If some other property comes up, some other opportunity for retail space or something like that, this is a living document, so this is not written in stone. So this is a starting place, and we don't know what's going to happen between now and the time that we go to the bond market. So we realistically, every year for the last 3 years, from May to August, we have grown what is typically a district in any other districts in the state of Tennessee. We've grown a full district because most districts are just the size of what students come over the summer. So that's one of the things that, we are behind. We're 3 years behind, and COVID did a lot of that. And look, there's nothing on this 5-year plan, either one of them, that money couldn't solve. There's nothing. And we all agree that all of this needs to be done. And it's just a question of when and how we can do it and how we get it funded.
Yep.
Any other questions? Number 3.
Number 3, the CMTA ESPC funding request, so additional discussion to move toward a motion, so I'm not ready to make that. We are still waiting on a copy of the contract and then still to get it approved by the comptroller. And so I will just continue to put this on there to give you an update each time to kind of show you where we are with that. There's nothing new that has happened in the last couple of weeks that I'm aware of. Is there, Trey? You're aware of? Or if you have an update, go. Yep. So.
And to recap, Dr. Sullivan did
Yes.
speak with several superintendents,
Yep.
and this is something that they highly recommend that we do.
Yeah, and it's not, that goes back to using basically some of our energy savings to be able to fund some of our capital projects. In a perfect world, we could go out and either borrow the money ourselves or ask our funding body to borrow that money. We realized our 5-year plan, our overall budget, that's probably not a realistic approach for us to get things funded. So this is looking for a way. No, it's not perfect. No, it's not what I would love to do, but it's an option to get things moving.
So this is not coming from the county commissioners? What we're looking
No.
at now is going.
No, they'd have to approve a resolution approving us to do this, but it would not involve them borrowing an additional funds.
But the main idea behind this is that if we create these energy savings, we can then use those savings to do projects like the HVAC system.
Basically, you go ahead and agree to a 15-year contract with them, and they go ahead and basically front load you to go ahead and take care of some of the capital projects. I agree, 10 to 12 years, are we in a similar boat? If we don't do something budget-wise yet, we're right back in the same boat with what buildings are 10 to 12 years old then. But that has been a common thing in the public, is what do you do for your current buildings? And that's not new to us. I think there was a article in the Tennessean maybe a week and a half ago that talked about the billions of dollars in government buildings, not just education-related, that were either in need of repair or something.
Trey Lee, I asked some information. I hope you get to share it with the board. I know we talked about the savings, which the contract says on the PowerPoint presentation is about $3 million, but that's going to be more in line with what the actual contract says and the stipulation. How soon will we see those terms if we were to vote for it, move forward with it, so that we can really see those numbers align and have, is it Jeff? Our Director of Finance look at it? Brian.
Brian's over there.
Sorry.
Mr. Runyon?
Yep.
They have submitted some sample contracts.
Okay,
There are options that we have. We can utilize an AIA contract, which some school districts do, and they borrow some of the money themselves. In other words, CMTA becomes your agent that goes to the banks to allow us to borrow the money. It's a financial decision that is determined typically by the county on what they're comfortable with, whether they're comfortable allowing us to borrow the money direct, or do we want to utilize them like the bank? They borrow the money and then in turn manage the projects. Either way, the savings is pretty much the same. The projects are not going to change. And the savings is not going to change that much. There's about $3 million in savings from installation of LED lighting in all of our schools, based on the current rate of return, borrowing the money. It's somewhere between around 4.5%, fluctuates, that's from Bank of America. So that has reduced the amount of projects that we would be able to do. There needs to be some information submitted to the state comptroller's office for them to review to determine which way we would like to go. Once we determine that way, then we can present to you the final sample contract per se.
Great.
yeah, that's what we will need to see is Brian looking over those numbers so that we can feel comfortable about the return on investment at the end of the day, and that we're keeping track of the kilowatts usage, because that's what has been said. We're going to be measuring the success of this program by looking at the kilowatt usage per school, per month, so that we can see if this is really cost-effective for us at the end of the day.
And I'll tell you what I'm honing in on. There's really a 10, 15, and 20-year option. 20 years is too long for what I really feel like I would be comfortable doing, just sitting. And so my job is to recommend to the board options. I don't recommend the 20s. I think that's too long.
Right, yeah, it's too long.
10-year doesn't give us enough funding to go down this road to really do anything. 15 is more than likely going to be my recommendation. And then it would be to recommend to use the company, because if we ask the county commission to let us borrow the money, then we are ultimately impacting their bond rating just like we would be if we were impacting schools, because they're taking out an additional liability. So there's not really a benefit to us doing that. We may as well just say, county commissioners, we need $50 million, because that's basically what we're doing. It'd be better for us to fund it, but that's the recommendation I'm moving towards.
Any more questions? Number 14, number 1.
All right, so number 14, number 1, tab 9, so I want to bring just something to everyone's attention. So this is kind of a new section, but Board Policy 1.403 in lines 2 and 3 says any board member may place items on the agenda for discussion. And so you will start seeing whatever number it has to be, but we're going to call it board motions. And so any board member that requests can add things under this tab. And so you're going to see a couple that were requested by various board members. As we move forward, if you're a board member that requests this, I would just ask for you to be ready to speak to it, because I think that helps. Or our staff is not going to be an expert on those areas if they weren't something that we requested to do. So the first one is contract for Veterans Parkway property. The Board of Education has been searching for property suitable for future school sites. An owner of a parcel of property on Veterans Parkway has expressed an interest to sell 50 to 70 acres to the Board of Education for the price of $82,000 an acre. Veterans Parkway is in one of the high-growth areas of the county. In order to move forward on the possible purchase of the property, a contract is necessary with the owner that will allow testing of the property in time for the Board of Education to seek financial approval by the County Commission. The contract could include the requirement of an appraisal, 80-day inspection period, and a contingency of funding approval by the Rutherford County Commission. The Board of Education could have the contract terminated if it does not elect to move forward with the purchase of the property during the inspection period. You'll see this language pretty much mirrors the Beatty property language, just for simplicity's sake.
Any comments or questions?
I did some research on this property, not the property itself specifically, but just any properties around it that had sold recently or had been on the market recently, anything like that. As you all know, I wasn't in favor of what we are under contract for with the Beatty property, and I still have concerns about where these prices are going. I did a search with a realtor today within a 5-mile radius of the Veterans Parkway property. And I have all of these. I'm happy to send them to you if you would like. But they are averaging, here's one that sold, that is off the market, but was on the market for over 220 days at $37,000 an acre. One that was on the market at $19,000 an acre. Another one that was on the market and sold for $12,000 an acre, roughly. One that is currently for sale, that is at $24,600 an acre. One that is $37,249 an acre that's up for sale, that's been on the market for over 200 days. And I'm by no means saying that these properties are in the right place or necessarily an exact comparison to what we're looking at. But this was within the last year. This is all that pulled up. There is one that is at $60,000 an acre that sits on 96. So it has major road frontage, increasing the value. This, to me, when we're spending taxpayer money, when we're asking to borrow large sums of money, I am still stuck in this place of I can't find from any person that works in real estate that I've spoken to, from any of the things that I've looked at, I can't find something to justify the price that we're looking at. At this point in there, that's the only issue that I have with it, is just that I would prefer as a board to enlist the help of a real estate agent to speak to the potential value of the property. Not just an appraiser who's going to justify what we're paying to the bank, but someone who's actually working in our best interest as far as, are we getting the best bang for our taxpayer dollar?
So I appreciate that you did all that, but I just want to bring up the Plainview property. So the Plainview property was purchased at $18,000 an acre for 150 acres total. And before we could even do anything, that means lay down a brick of concrete, a wall, or whatever, we had to spend $15,476,226 on the infrastructure just before we could even do. That was the site development. So if you add that plus the $2 million on the land, that's a total of $18,176,226. So if you take that number and you divide it by the 150 acres, that $18,000 acre really cost us $121,175 to actually be able to do anything before we can even build it to get the infrastructure. So, and that doesn't even include the problem that we found with the wetlands. And so instead of being able to build 3 schools, we can only possibly use it for 2 schools, because that was what it was meant for. And if we want to build a 3rd school, we will have to buy land 32.4 credits at $50,000 per acre. So that will look at an additional $1,620,000. So all that to say that something that looks cheap, that sounds affordable, doesn't necessarily mean it's a good investment. And I think for me as a board member, and I would think for all of us, we will need to look at, is this piece of property a good investment? Because this scenario with the Plainview wasn't the best investment for what we were needing. And so even though it may sound like it's a lot, we really need to look at from a perspective of, does it have the infrastructure to begin with? Does it, will it have adequate land to build what we're looking for to build? Is there anything in there that will not keep us from building what we need, whether it be wetlands or there are caves? And that's what we have in the contingency in the contracts to do our due diligence, so that when we go before the county commissioner, this is a good property. Now, this area where the veterans location is at, it would relieve 4 schools. And we're looking at Christiana, Wentworth, Buchanan, Rockville, and Blackman Elementary to build the middle school. And if we build the middle school, I believe it will also mean that other things will come into play. Tralee, what will happen what will this land do for us as a school-wise of what we need if a middle school were to build? How will that shake out with the rest of the school builds that we need in the different locations? What will that mean with the other properties?
In its current location, it would be a good location to alleviate overcrowding at multiple schools. It's a good location.
And then it will also mean that the Beatty property, if we were to get that, it will eliminate the middle school over there, right? Or will we look at high school?
I would be scared to use the word eliminate.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I will not use the word eliminate, but it will
At some time in the
change.
future, the Beatty property will probably be used for a middle school.
Okay.
Would it need to be built today?
No.
Probably not.
Well, if we start the process similar to what we did with the Beatty property, we get the appraisals, we do this, we can find out, maybe they'll go down in price just like the Beatty property did. We don't know that, but we need to know that, that it's good land too. So we can back out. If it's not what we want it to be, we can back out.
May I make a recommendation, step out on a limb?
Yeah.
Saw it off behind me. Since this property is not at the forefront of where the Beatty property was in its current need, in other words, we wouldn't, if we were to purchase this property, we probably wouldn't build on it for a year or 2. I think we could, and I'm speaking for the owner of the property, I would have to reach out to them, but I think they would be patient enough to allow us to do an appraisal or something like that. See what the appraisal comes back at. If it comes back way low, we can approach the owner about negotiating on a price. If it comes back way high, whatever it comes back. At that point, make a determination, do we want to move forward and spend the money on testing? Let's get the appraisal, get it from whoever we want to get it, however many people we want to get. Based on that appraisal, see if we're way far apart. It would cost us $6,000.
I agree.
to do an appraisal
It's just
and do that to see before we go forward with any testing or anything like that. And if the numbers are not anywhere near, you all can vote to not pursue the property or whatever. I've spoken with the owner today. I told him it was going to be on the agenda for Thursday night, so he's probably watching.
think
I
that's
did
great.
tell him to go ahead and put under contract his crops for this year, that he usually rents the property out. I told him, even if we went forward, we wouldn't be building on it this year, because we're not going to be able to add a middle school to that 5-year building program with the elementary and the 3 additions. It's just not, so it would be a year anyway. So I would make that recommendation if you would authorize Jeff and I to go ahead and get an appraisal, spend $6,000, and then we'll get that back, and then y'all can make a determination at that time whether you want to go forward or not.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, Mr. Lee.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tralee.
Yeah, I'd just like to say something on that. So when I was talking about the Beatty property, I know you brought this property up, and we discussed that a little bit. But even if he's under lease for another year, right? The guy at the Veterans Parkway Park, the property we're talking about, the Veterans Parkway.
He's wanting to go under contract with the farmer that usually farms his land to allow him to row crop it.
Okay. I guess maybe I'm missing the point where it makes sense to do this now, considering I would be very happy if the county commission comes back and approves our proposal here. But I would just be surprised. We want to show some good faith on the school's part as well. I guess I'm not seeing the purpose of doing it right away, even though I don't think the cost is much. I guess I'm just not seeing that portion.
Because it may not be here in a year.
Well,
This may
he's
not
going
be
under
here
lease.
well, just because it's on a contract doesn't necessarily mean that he's not,
We're not going under contract.
no, not with us, with someone
The
else.
contract doesn't prevent him from selling the property to us or anybody else. He's got an agreement to rent his land to farm it. Mr. Beatty has his property under contract, just happens to be his son-in-law that's doing the farming. They're going to cut their crops. When we purchased the Plainview property, there was a gentleman on that farm who had that farm leased. And there was an agreement made that we could not start, even though we purchased it, we couldn't do anything until the crops were harvested. We're not in danger of needing to do anything before these crops are going to be harvested. It's not going to preclude him from selling it to someone else if they decided to come along ahead of us. But it was the same thing at the Beatty property.
But the price could go up if we wait
It
a
could
little
go
bit
down,
longer.
it could go up, and somebody could buy it.
And somebody else could buy it.
They could. It's the same chance we take with any property.
Every property, yeah.
Right, but then if there's a motion or whatever for the appraisal, it will lock us in at least.
Well, it
No.
doesn't, all it does
Just tells us
is
to
allow
appraise.
me to get us an appraisal. It doesn't lock us into anything or anybody.
So we're not going to be going to the contract, we just get an
Nope.
appraisal.
We're getting an appraisal.
Yeah, this is not like the 180 days that we're.
Correct.
So this would be
Once
like
we
30
get the appraisal, then you can make the determination if you want to go under contract to do the 180 days.
But it's in a location where we need, that will alleviate.
I will add to that, I don't really care where the land is, but we have the 2 largest middle schools in the state of Tennessee, Rockville Middle and Blackman Middle, sitting right there. We're going to need something there somewhere.
Yeah,
Yes, it's a good location, that's all.
it's a good
It is a
location.
great location.
Not to add that we have been looking for land in that area for 5 years or better and had much success. Even the Beatty property has been a blessing for us to finally get an opportunity to buy that property, because it's just not easy to find property in that area.
A lot of the property in that area has already been purchased by our large developers, and they're not interested in selling to us.
Mr. Lee, would you change the motion to reflect?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Number 2.
All right, number 2, so again, this is under the board motions portion. So Smyrna property on Sam Ridley Parkway discussion, the board's engaged in some discussions with the owner of a parcel of property adjacent to Smyrna High School for possible purchase as a future school site. Upon evaluating the property in the Smyrna area for a future school site to serve as a multi-use school, there may be adequate land on an existing school site within proximity of the parcel of land on Sam Ridley Parkway by Smyrna High School that is suitable for such purpose. The board should make a determination whether it's interested in pursuing the property adjacent to Smyrna High School.
How many acres are we looking at here?
Is it 83, Mr. Lee? I mean,
Yeah,
excuse me, Mr. Reed.
it's 80-ish. Some of it's in the floodplain, cannot be built on, but there's some things that, ball fields or park or walking tracks and that kind of thing, but you couldn't build on.
Is it technically Lee Victory at that spot, or is it
It's
Sam?
Lee Victory or Almaville.
It changes at Murfreesboro Road, so that would be
Almaville?
Almaville.
I was confused when I saw Sam Ridley earlier, so.
But it changes at
I
Murfreesboro
know when you
Road.
go around that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Thompson Lane in Nashville. It's the same road, crosses 3 different places and stops again.
And this was just another piece of property we were just looking at. There was no, just doing some due diligence on to see if the owner would entertain selling it and how much. There was no plans to put this on the 5-year building plan.
Are we looking at this in a similar fashion? We're just trying to talk about an appraisal, or are we talking about putting a contract?
No.
This is to walk away discussions with with that property that was adjacent to the Smyrna High School. And it's because we have 53 acres in the elementary school that we could potentially use for a multi-use school, because that's what this property, that was a recommendation that Trey Lee was given us at the time when we were discussing it, was for a multi-use type, like a magnet school or something similar to that.
Number 3.
All right, number 3 is the temporary assistance for needy families. The TANF resolution, Rutherford County Board of Education is charged with governing their schools so that all students receive educational opportunities. Rutherford County Board of Education views TANF, which is a federal program authorized under federal law to provide funds to assist needy families, as a potential method to help serve students. Tennessee maintains flexibility in spending the $191 million of annual funds received and has the option to expand TANF fund services to underfunded areas. Several social services are funded by the state and deal directly with TANF purposes, but local boards of education struggle to fully fund the programs as the state's funding formula doesn't adequately meet the needs of districts when funding the programs. Rutherford County Board of Education wants to urge the General Assembly to allow local boards of education to use TANF funds for costs related to funding programs to support social services.
So the legislative assistant for Michael Sparks has requested that board members and our staff submit to Dr. Sullivan, any programs that we see that could use this money, and he's looking for a list to be submitted to him. So if y'all have, one of your schools has an after-school program or something like that that could use this money, we'd love to see something tangible out of this, but if it's an after-school program that's babysitting children or tutoring after school or something like that, if y'all will please get your list together and send it to Dr. Sullivan. So once we vote on the resolution, we can include that when we send in the resolution.
Do we have a list that tells us what qualifies and what doesn't qualify? I'm thinking like Atlas, that program to me should qualify, would it?
There was no parameters. But I think when they do this, he's hoping to write the bill and talk to the governor. So, Atlas would be perfect. I think that would be certainly top of the list. Because on any given school year, I'm not sure what the numbers are this year, but we usually have around 1,200 or 1,300 students in
It's probably
Atlas.
closer to 2,000. It's where we ended last year, so I'd imagine it'd get closer to that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of students. Even as wealthy as our county is, we still have a lot of homeless students. For those that are listening and watching, Atlas is the supplement for our homeless students. So that would be a perfect one. Number 15.
All right, number 15, financial report. So we'll go over some of this. This kind of starts our budget season, if you will. So our budget calendar was set in December by Ms. Sharp and myself, and so we looked at this and to kind of give you an update of where we are. We had our principals information meeting in December. We emailed forms to principals. So we have had 49 of the 51 individual principal budget meetings. We have 2 left tomorrow, so we took about 40 minutes each one of them and went over our budget, how funding works, all that different type of stuff, and the next step in that is after principals submit their request, our individual departments, so coordinated school health, special education, maintenance, every department in our central office now looks at principal requests, and we try to consolidate that and build our budget from there. And so we are right in the middle of where we need to be. So February 9th is the next date on our budget calendar, which is Thursday. And so that is just a board discussion on budget priorities. And so we'll talk about that during the financial update on Thursday, all moving us to the final date of June 26th, which is where the Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee present our budget for final approval. And so this is a coordinated effort with the county school system and our local funding body, the County Commission. So as part of that, I just wanted to give you all an overview. You have 2 big documents in front of you. So the first one has the Rutherford County seal and logo on it. And so this is the entire Rutherford County government budget. And we are not going to spend really much time at all looking at this tonight. As we start looking at our budget priorities, we will look at like the tax levies, how many cents go to each one of them. But this is the entire county. If you will, real quick, if you will just turn to page 88 of this document, I want to show you where the 2 documents that we're going to talk about today connect. So if you'll just turn to page 88, and if you will look at the very first line, so on the other document that has the green at the top, you can tell I'm an educator because I have it color-coded. The very first line you will see says Fund 141. That is our general purpose school fund. And the very first object is 71-100 regular education program elementary second. You will see that first number under 116 teachers is $172,110,546. Where that feeds into, if you go to page 88 on the big county budget document, you will see 71-100, 116, all the way to the right is the approved budget, 172-110-546, which is the exact same number that is on the sheet that we look at when I give you the financial summaries every month. So just wanted you to see that this is the entire county's budget, but the numbers that we are looking at when we look at our Rutherford County schools is feeding directly back into the entire county's budget. And the numbers match. If they don't, we're in trouble. But that's not on our school system. So the numbers match. I guarantee that they're matching. So just know that is where the number comes from. And this also gives you an idea of where the money has gone every single year. So let's put that big, huge Rutherford County government to the side. And I just wanted to give you an overview of all the different funds we have as we start to move forward. So the first paperclip that we have is Fund 141, and so we're going to talk about the different buckets of money that we have. This is our general purpose school budget. It is $493 million this year of expenditures with a revenue of $464 million. And so we are in a budget deficit of $28.5 million. You will see there are different object codes, and I'll show this in a simpler version on Thursday, but I want you to have all the, and this is exactly what our principals are looking at too. They are looking and we're going over this, not line by line, but I think this one is a great one to look at. So let's just look at 71, 100, 116. That very first thing, in teacher salaries, we spend $172 million in teacher salaries. If you go on down, that is just salaries. If you look at the number that says 201 following right down the left-hand side, in Social Security, we pay another $11 million in teacher salaries. If you go to the next one, pensions, is another $18 million that goes towards teacher salaries. If you go to medical insurance, $28.9 million. And so rightfully so, most of our funding goes to our people. And that's where it should go. There's always conversation, right, does our budget look like? As part of this budget process, I will also, as on the state report card, any individual can go and look to see how do we fund per pupil ratio and how do we fund administrative to pupil ratio. And we are well under what we need to be. And so there's that conversation of what's your budget look like, how lean is it? Our budget is as lean pretty much as it possibly can be. And we look at this all the time. But we'll go over this a little bit closer. And what I want to point out, this is not your only line that you have for instruction. So if you will flip over to the third page of that, this is the one that we hear a whole lot about. And this tells you exactly kind of as a county why we struggle. So we're still in Fund 141, that number at the top. That's that big $493 million budget. And now we're looking at the object that says 71,150 alternative instruction. You will see we only spend 1.8 million on alternative school teachers. To give you an idea, about 16 teaching positions equals $1 million in salary. We have 29 alternative school teachers for our entire district. Why do we struggle with alternative school and student behavior and that type of thing? That's not where we've had to invest money in the past as a Rutherford County School District. That is not where we are now that we have added so many students. And so I kept going to, and it was eye-opening for us as principals in our central office to see why do we keep having this conversation? What do we do about alternative school? It hasn't been an investment priority because it just didn't need to be. But you'll see that same kind of line item there. There's one other one, if you'll flip over to 71,200, this was eye-opening for all of us when we were having our principals meeting. This is special education. This is special education funded from state and local funds. This is not special education funded federally. The majority of our positions are funded state and local for special education. So much so that I believe it was $42 or $43 million we fund for out of our local and state funds for special education. So we fund 17 million in teachers here. You go down another 2.8 million in pensions, and another 6 million in medical insurance. This trend continues. Career and technical education, I think they call it vocational education still at the state level, continues. Then we get into school support, which is your media specialist. This is just an overall view of where does our funds go in this 141. I'll go over this in a little bit more of an overview instead of so specific on Thursday as part of that. And this just helps us build into our budget. If you'll now go, any questions on that one? I know this is huge, please.
I was going to ask, what do we receive from the federal government? Because I know they don't fund us at the rate that they promised to fund us at. Maybe I'm premature.
I can pull that out of E-Plan, right? So, great question. What do we get from the federal government? I could tell you right now, but right now the state sent all districts across the state the TISA verification to give us an idea of what we would get, and we just had to go into what they call EIS and E-Plan to look at that funding. It has been down since we received it. And so I can't tell you what we are doing federally because I can't get into the state system to look at it. It's been down for 2 days and it is just amazing. But that's common, unfortunately. But that is our 141 school fund, the big, huge how do we operate as a district. The next one is in blue. So this is federal, and this kind of gives us an idea, but it's not just a quick, simple breakdown. This would be all of our federally funded special education, our federally funded vocational, federally funded Title I. That's where all of this different type of things. And you're going to notice the exact same numbers, which it makes it easy for us to follow. 71,100, 116 is your teacher line item. The only difference is the fund at the top, instead of being local, this is funded federally, 142. And it follows the exact same object codes. You'll see special education 2 pages later to where you can get a great overview of how much we are paying for comparatively. So if you're on the 3rd page, we have special education. So out of our 141, we are funding $17 million in teachers. And on a federal level, we are funding a little bit over $1.037 million. So that whole conversation of what do we do without, it's not funding what we are led to believe. And this was eye-opening for us in looking at it as a district too. Very eye-opening. So this is all 142. County Commission doesn't necessarily get involved in 142. So I'm going to just kind of place it to the side, and it was blue. The next one that the county commission does have to approve is pink. It's 143. This is our centralized cafeteria fund. And so the first page is just kind of a couple quick things that the Board of Education has to cover in this fund. So auditing that, workers' compensation, insurance. But then if you go to the next line, you'll see kind of our operating costs. To the next page, sorry. So the next page is 73,100 food service. That's all of our operating cost. You see 165 cafeteria personnel is $9 million, and then we go through Social Security, pensions, medical insurance, same type of thing. And if you will go to the next page, you will see our overall budget, and that's why it somewhere fluctuates between 22 and 24 million roughly. We are getting a new grant, so this number's a little bit higher than it has been. But that operates in that 22 to 24 million dollars. That is largely USDA and state funded. We actually, if you look at this, let me find the actual line of charges. There's a line in here, I believe around $500,000 of what we are actually using to cover some of the things. We have not 500,000?
That's actually coming out of 141.
Oh, it's coming out of 141, never mind. So, thanks, Brian. But we are using some of our 141 money in this location to fund some of the charges that we talk about. We will just leave it at that, and we can talk about that a little bit more.
Would that be something that the TANF funds?
It would be hard because these students aren't showing up as needy, and that's part of our problem, is they're not filling out the required documentation. Great idea, though. Definitely great idea, but they're not filling out that documentation. So what is Brian's talking about is about $500,000 we take out of our 141 count, that first one, to go back and pay for some of our charges in this 142.
Well, that's a problem. How do we fix that problem? With kids not filling out their paper, or parents not filling out their paper?
So we've talked a couple of things. One is we're going to try to require that as part of the Skyward registration. I do envision us still at that point, I think I mentioned at the last board meeting, is that we do struggle because in any time of filling out federal paperwork, we have parents for whatever reason, whether it is a legitimate reason or they're undocumented, we have to educate all students regardless, and we take them. And if we ask for that information, then they may just show up on day 1, day 2, day 3, which is often the case, but then we truly have no idea where they go. And we will be acting in place of the parents. So that's something we are looking at and will probably do. But I do imagine some logistic issues on the first couple of days. Because you're right, that's the first step, is we have to know the information.
And I believe it was Representative or Senator White who talked about legislation. Won't help us now, but it will help us next year.
The next one is purple, so that's Fund 177. This is what we like to call our capital projects. And so again, you will see the first page is just basically what we are paying the trustee's office, and then the second page is what we're looking at doing things. So this is what in the past has been that $7 to $10 million that we put additional cents from the property tax this year into, so that we could try to take care of some of our capital projects. You'll see overall that budget's about $18 million is what we're looking at. Beside it, we had money left over because we didn't spend the way that the contractors are, and some projects coming in much slower than we anticipate because of the either shortage of supply chain or labor market not being able to fill the orders that we need and demand. So our overall budget here is $18 million, and this is what we are trying to attack, that $200 to $300 million backlog in HVAC, all those different types of things. So that's Fund 177. And then the very last one is Fund 189. So this is our educational capital projects. This is kind of our expenditures to date of what we are doing for our entire building program. And so those are different, but I think it's good for us to think about 141 is the big one of how do we operate. 142 is federal, 143 is centralized cafeteria, 177 is our capital maintenance, and then 189, capital project, sorry, not capital maintenance. And then 189 is our building program. So that's just a quick and dirty overview of the budget process. We've gone over that a couple of times, but as we are about to really start looking at these lines, where do funds go to, all those different types of things. Yes, we will get additional funding from TISA, and that gets us to that budget priority as a district. The first thing for TISA will be to get us out of that $30 million hole roughly that we're in this year. And then the second, what we talked about in October and setting our priorities, we're looking at a way to take care, make sure we are recruiting and retaining our staff the right way, and then looking at our building projects and behavior. So those are kind of, as we've talked about with principals, our school system as far as our operations, what do we consider our priorities? Behavior, staffing, and then buildings. So.
I've highlighted educational systems.
Yes.
We have got to come through.
Yes.
They have been patient, they have waited, and we've got to make good on our promises. I agree.
Reading insurance update.
Mr. Lee?
General discussion, I have an update for y'all.
Okay.
Oh, can we get through a couple things quick? I think we got director's update first. Yep. Only thing I have to add to that as well is our salary study group is here, so somebody asked that at the very beginning. They completed a job assessment tool. We had, I believe, over 45 or 50% of our employees do that, so you're looking at over 3,000 responses. Now all of their supervisors, yeah, that's a great response rate. Really, you're looking for anything between 15 and 20 to be an exceptional response rate. So now our supervisors are going through and reviewing what everybody put, just so that we have an idea and we can say, I have all principals that are reporting to mine. Did the right people get coded to the right place? They are here in the director's conference room and they are meeting with a couple lead principals. They are meeting with our staff and going through just what we see on a daily basis. All of that being able to present options to us in that timeline I talked about. That's all I'm going to bring up.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to do your report Thursday, Ms. Rosales? Okay.
Yeah, I can wait till Thursday.
Okay. You can do it tonight if you want to.
Well, I was just going to say that I attended the State of the State address yesterday at the Capitol. There was quite a few education items. It's a big item and agenda. One, I think everyone is going to be very pleased is to hear is that there's going to be proposed legislation to change the minimum pay of $36,000 to $50,000 for teachers. And there's going to be an additional funding that's going to be added to the TISA for salary pay raises. Safety is also going to be a big priority. They're wanting to add more presence of authority and including a homeland agent at each county. And they're also looking at adding budget this year to really fund alternatives, solutions to strengthen the programs for literacy programs. So that's where their educational items that were on his address that he gave yesterday.
Nothing federal?
No.
Okay, thank you. General discussion, Mr. Lee, you're up.
Just want a quick update, everybody, on the bid schedule. I know it's been discussed as part of the 5-year program. The Smyrna High project will bid Thursday, 2 o'clock here in the boardroom. Riverdale is set to go out. We had originally scheduled to go out January the 20th. We are continuing to work with the city. We're anticipating going out on February the 16th and receiving bids on March 2nd. Oakland will go out March 2nd, and we will receive bids on March 16th, and that will get us to the board on March 23rd. A little bit behind what we had, but I've got a meeting tomorrow with the city, and I got another one next Wednesday with the city. We're going to go ahead and put them out whether we have city blessing or not. And then we'll have to address it from there. Ma'am? It will be at the March 23rd board meeting. Y'all will be voting on all 3 projects to go to Health and Ed. Which only gives us 1 week to get to Health and Ed.
And all board members are at a conference, and I'm in Ireland during that Health and Ed meeting, so that's going to be wonderful. Great. Wonderful. Okay. Of March. Health and Ed is that next Tuesday. Board members may be here. We'll see.
Okay. Oh, I thought you said we were going to be out. Okay. Because I was like, no, we're not going until the end. It's the 29th through the 2nd.
I know there's been some discussion about some special property or some property for a special use, whether that's arts or special needs or something. And we had talked about a building that's coming up for sale, if it isn't already for sale, over on River Rock.
It's gone.
Is it gone?
Yep.
No way.
Yep. Found out right before our meeting. Just found it on Friday and it's gone.
Wow.
Yep.
All the discussion I had on it.
Yep.
I'd just like to thank our elementary school principals for our dinner this
Yes.
evening. That was very, very
It was
sweet,
fun. Thank you.
appreciated, and kind. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Something I'd like to bring up for the board to think about, and I'll probably have it under the board motions next meeting, would be us to consider, we have a lot of championship teams that come through Rutherford County, and I think it'd be something that we should consider, helping these parents pay for some of these memories of their student athletes winning these championships. It's a huge cost to some of these parents, and I know just looking at Oakland, this is the third year that these parents are having to fundraise to just pay for their championship rings. And I had a county commissioner come to me and asked me to bring this up and see if there's some way we can help out with this funding. So it's just something I think we need to be thinking about.
If that's all, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. We are adjourned.